The term serial killer usually evokes thoughts of monsters moving in the shadows, hunting and then pouncing on their victims. These killers often lure or ambush their prey, leaving behind gruesome scenes and even sometimes their own disturbing signature. But there are other kinds of serial killers, the kind that don't need to hide in the shadows because their victims come directly to them. On October 5, 2016, Elizabeth Wetlaufer, a nurse that previously worked for the Carescent Care Senior Living Facility, voluntarily confessed to Toronto police that she had killed several of her patients during her 7-year tenure.
And when you say you told them what was going on, did you get into details of why you were going to seek help? Or?
I told them that I had been killing people using an insulin overdose. And they all said, yes, you better go get help. So off I went.
Okay.
Elizabeth Tracy May Parker was born on June 10, 1967 in Woodstock, Ontario, to parents Doug and Hazel and brother Robert. Doug and Hazel were both students at a Bible college in Toronto, but eventually moved to South Zora, a rural town near Woodstock. Doug worked as a salesman and Hazel a secretary. Elizabeth, or Beth as she was called by family and friends, was a shy child that was often bullied. She attended Huron Park Secondary School where she was in the choir and the band and enjoyed drama. She claimed to be just an average student that didn't try very hard. In high school, she became more outgoing but still had a hard time making friends. She displayed a few behavioral issues and admitted to occasionally using drugs and alcohol, but insisted that it had not yet become a problem. The Parker family attended church twice a week, on Sundays for service and Wednesdays for youth group and Bible study. Doug later became the founding pastor for the Newcastle Baptist Church and continued to preach at other churches and even acted as chaplain for a transport service. Needless to say, the Parker family was very devout. Beth's faith would be a source for a lot of conflict in her life, especially when she realized that her sexual preferences did not align with the Baptist teachings. Beth first realized that she had an attraction to both men and women when she was a teenager, and according to an old friend, Glenn Hart, she had even tried kissing a girl, but was rejected. Beth graduated from Huron Park and attended London Bible College, now called Heritage College, where she studied to become a religious counselor, even though she had expressed throughout high school her dreams of being in drama or journalism. Her college journey would come to a pause, however, after she attended a gay-friendly church with a female friend, who was likely a girlfriend. Her family refused to believe that their daughter was gay or even bisexual and went as far as to send her to conversion therapy. There are several accounts of this story, some of which claim that it was her parents that forced her to take a break from school, and others that say that Beth was kicked out. Once Beth maintained that she'd found God again and was no longer gay, she was accepted back at school, where she received a bachelor's degree in religious studies, though her relationship with her family, especially her brother, was never fully mended. But of course, no matter how hard she'd hoped and prayed, Beth's homosexuality was not some kind of disease to be cured, and she continued to struggle with her mental health as she tried to suppress her true feelings. This led to self-medicating through heavier drug use, something that would become an even bigger problem when she received access to prescription-grade medications. After graduating Bible College, Beth transferred to Conestoga College, where she studied nursing, after again never sharing that she'd had any interest in the field. In 1995, she graduated, became a registered nurse, and landed her first job at Geraldton General Hospital. She also took a second job working for an assisted living facility and would sometimes work shifts for both facilities on the same day. After struggling for so long with her religious views, the pressure put on her by her family, and a move to Ontario, Beth relented and gave in to her addictions, drinking alcohol regularly and stealing controlled medications such as lorazepam, diazepam, and morphine from the med rooms of her job. Beth also stopped attending church. During one of her shifts, Beth took a large dose of lorazepam, and her co-workers noticed she was impaired. They admitted her into the same hospital where she recovered for a few days before she was fired. The Ontario Nurses Association did not, however, revoke her license, but rather set her up with counseling and treatment. The ONA, a union organization, assisted Beth in grieving her termination, which resulted in the hospital modifying her professional file to reflect a resignation rather than a termination of employment. She was required to submit urinalysis tests to the ONA and remain clean while in treatment, as her substance abuse would remain on public record for 6 years. The benefit of her resignation was that future employees wouldn't need to know about her transgressions at the hospital. In 1996, Beth moved back to her hometown of Woodstock and began a substance abuse program. Things started looking up for Beth. She'd stayed sober for a time, got herself a new job in social services at Christian Horizons, and started going back to church. It was there, at South Zorra Baptist, that she would meet a trucker named Donnie Wetlaufer. The two married the following year, but Beth continued to struggle with her sexuality. She spiraled slowly as she began flirting outside of her marriage with other women online, and it was at this time that she claimed to hear voices. She'd also been in trouble several times at Christian Horizons for incorrect medication dosage and emotionally abusing patients. She sought psychiatric care and was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and given legal prescriptions to treat her symptoms. This did not stop her from stepping out on Donnie and maintaining romantic online affairs with various women. Her relationship with one woman, Sheila Andrews, seemed to be the direct cause for Beth and Donnie's divorce in 2007, and the pair moved in together. Sheila, however, did not have a job, and Elizabeth did not make enough money in her social services position, so she took a job at a senior care home facility called Carescent Care. Sheila and Elizabeth married, and Sheila's mother moved into their apartment, but the two would call it quits shortly after. Beth was suspended several times for medication errors at the care home and was finally terminated on March 31, 2014, and the dismissal letter stated that she had failed to follow insulin protocol. Once again, the ONA stepped in to aid her, filing a grievance against her termination and was even awarded $2,000 in their agreement. Elizabeth continued to find work in other care homes, such as Meadow Park, but resigned to seek out psychiatric treatment once more. She then took two jobs, one for lifeguard home care that had her working in multiple facilities, and for another provider, ironically named St. Elizabeth Healthcare, but she resigned from those jobs shortly after too. On September 16, 2016, Beth entered a rehabilitation program at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health Teaching Hospital, where she dropped a bomb on the staff treating her. Elizabeth confided in the nurses that she had been intentionally overdosing her patients during her stints in the care facilities. She made an even bigger revelation when she'd confessed that her endeavors directly resulted in the death of 8 patients. While in the treatment center, she'd also confided these same truths to her old friend Glenn Hart, who in turn called the police. A 4-page confession was sent over to the Toronto Police Department and to the Ontario College of Nursing, which she resigned from in the same email. In October of 2016, Elizabeth voluntarily went to the police station to confess her crimes in person.
Back at Meadow Park, what was your addiction?
Hydromorph.
Okay. All right.
Hydromorphone.
Okay. And how much were you using?
I was a binge user, so I would use what I could get a hold of.
Okay.
By stealing it from the patients.
Okay. All right. And how would that work? Would it just be in their allotted medications, or would you have access to a card to feed your addiction?
There's some in there allotted medications. Some of them had confusion, so they couldn't tell the difference between what pills you were giving them, so I'd give them a laxative instead of their hydromorph.
Okay.
There was a lot of them had as needed, so it would be in a big card, and then they'd say, I would just punch out that, oh, Barney needed 2 of those today, and oh, Billy needed 3 of those today, when they really didn't.
Okay.
And that's how I would get a hold of it.
Okay.
Every once in a while, there was also a big drug holder, like a safe almost, that we would put the drugs in.
Okay.
Once, if somebody died, and there were 23 hydromorph left, would slide the whole card into the drug holder. Well, if you picked it up and turned it upside down and shook it, you'd get drugs back out of it.
Okay. So you had your ways.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And was that ever an issue with staff there? Were you ever confronted, or did that go totally undetected for the time you were there?
There was a time when hydromorph was delivered to the home, and it didn't get put away right away by the person who should have. And so I took the hydromorph and put it in my bag and took it home, and it wasn't discovered for months.
Okay.
And so I just played dumb. When the police told me about it, I played dumb.
Yeah. And that was that?
Yeah.
Alright. So as a binge user then, like how much would you be using on a, I mean obviously you wouldn't use it on a daily basis if you were binge using, but like how long did the addiction last for?
Oh, the addiction lasted from, I think it started in 2008.
Okay.
So to 2014, at which time I went away and got treatment at a treatment center.
Okay.
But then I started using again, probably January 2016 I started using again.
Okay. And are you still using when you get your hands on them, or?
No. I'm going to stop using alcohol as well. I have friends in AA, and I've got a very clear plan. If I'm able to be out and about,
Right.
I have a very clear plan. And I also know if I'm not able to be out and about, that AA and Narcotics Anonymous do have some programs where they come into prison.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
that's my plan.
Well, that's good that you have a plan.
She admitted to stealing pain medication from her patients to take it for herself, claiming that they wouldn't notice if she'd given them their dose. She then described how she'd killed her victims throughout a near decades-long time period.
The insulin was kept in a fridge in the medication room. We had 2 medication rooms. Insulin was kept in a fridge in the medication room, and extra pens were kept in the drawer. So you could just say somebody had someone admitted you needed a pen in a hurry. So you just put the insulin in the pen and put the needle on and dial up the dose and give it.
And how was that documented to know that, so that Crescent Care would know that you were taking that insulin?
They didn't keep track of insulin.
Okay. So it was just something that was available for the nurses' use when they knew that it was appropriate for the certain patients?
Yes. Now each patient has their own insulin.
Right.
And maybe somebody may have noticed that a lot of insulin was missing if a lot was used, but I was always careful to use different people.
Okay. Different people's insulin?
Insulin, yes.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Silcox, then, where did you inject the insulin into his body?
I'm not really sure. I'm going to say his arm or his torso.
And did he know what was going on at that point?
Not really.
Was he a verbal patient? Like, could he converse with you and communicate?
He didn't really converse. He did a lot of yelling out. I don't really remember him reacting when I gave it to him.
So, he didn't react?
I don't remember him reacting, no.
Okay. Would he maybe just think it's a regular portion of his day and
Probably.
receiving medications that he so required?
Probably severe dementia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you can remember about Mr. Silcox?
His wife and daughter loved him a lot.
Mm-hmm. And how does that make you feel?
Crappy.
Yeah.
Horrible. Like I said, he could be a bit of a handful, but, he ate and drank normally, he took his pills when you told him to, so nothing else I can really remember about him. But this is, 9 years ago, so.
It's a while ago.
Yeah.
How long after, when did you break up with your husband?
I broke up with him.
August 2007?
Oh, no. I broke up with him in end of January, beginning of February 2007.
Okay, so it was quite some time till September until you actually...
Yeah.
All right, I guess.
By that time, I was in a new relationship with a woman.
Okay. Who was that?
Her name was Maureen.
Did you ever disclose to her what you were doing?
No, absolutely not.
So you just kind of went about your thing with Mr. Silcox?
Yeah.
Went home that day, did your kind of some exercising, computer games, went to sleep. Did you work again that next day?
I don't remember.
Oh, I don't know. Do you remember who you would have been working with on that occasion?
No.
No?
No, I don't. I'm sorry.
Okay. Are you okay?
Yeah.
You want to get up and stretch?
I just do a lot of fidgeting.
Okay, that's okay. Hey, you're not bothering me. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Okay.
If I need something, I'll do it.
Okay. You betcha. Do you remember who your supervisor would have been at that point?
Well, that would be Helen Crombie.
That was the head nurse?
Yeah, she was always, whoever was on as the nurse was the charge nurse.
Okay.
So I was the charge nurse. And at night, as the charge nurse from 3 to 11, I was in charge of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 PSWs. And I was and then there was 2 other wings. And so at night, as a charge nurse, I was responsible to look after the RPN on the other side. I'd be a resource for her.
Okay.
There were 4 PSWs on that side and 4 PSWs on my side, so 9 people.
Okay.
And then Mrs. Conley, of course, she was around with me.
Okay. She's for kitties.
Yeah. So she's who we all answered to. She was, her and the executive director, Brenda, I don't remember her last name. I'm sorry, I'm probably gonna pass gas with you, Julie.
That's fine. So, as far as Mr. Silcox goes then, besides what you were feeling in your stomach, and besides that you thought that this was a purpose that you were given on from your relationship after breaking up with your husband, right?
Yeah.
You indicated that he wasn't a very nice man.
No, he wasn't.
Is that a portion of what happened?
I don't know.
Okay.
I wonder if that's a portion of how I chose him. And afterwards I did feel a release and a relief. Like a relief of pressure.
Okay. Because throughout this document, and as we go through it, a lot of these people, you kind of describe them as not very nice people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if that's a tendency or a pattern that we see as far as, is that why you chose these people?
Yeah, it might be, but I also know I just felt like they were the ones.
Right.
I had a feeling inside that they were the ones.
Before you injected insulin to Mr. Silcox, was it a spur of the moment thing? Had you thought about it then? When you reported for duty at 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
I started thinking about it about 6 at night, I think.
Okay. And do you remember who the pronouncing doctor would have been?
No.
Like how did that process work?
That process, the way it worked was person's found with no vital signs. Nurse goes in with the stethoscope, listens for 1 minute. If there's no heartbeat, no lung sounds, nurse goes and calls the doctor on call.
Okay.
There was also a sheet that we had to fill out if we thought it was a coroner's case. In this case, I don't believe we thought it was. And then family is called. And the doctor may wait to come in and pronounce in the morning.
Okay.
Family can come in and visit the body at any time.
Okay.
So then the PSWs would get the body ready.
Okay. So prior to the doctor announcing in the morning, the family could come in and spend time?
Yeah, so the PSWs would just clean them up, put on, put in clean breeches and clean up the bed and stuff.
Right. So you said Mr. Silcox, you said we didn't think it was a coroner's case. Who's this? What would that been?
I guess I'm using the royal we.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. So would that be just a decision that you were trusted to make?
No, there's a form on the computer, and you go down through it, and if you tick off anything that says yes, you notify the coroner.
Okay. All right. But you would have clicked off those boxes yourself?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously, knowing that you had done this to Mr. Silcox, did you feel that you wouldn't click yes so that attention wouldn't be drawn to you?
I honestly can't remember if he was a coroner case or not.
Okay.
He might have been.
Now, would insulin...
Even though I did this to these people, when I did but see, it's phrased as, does anyone have a reason to believe that this death was not natural?
Right.
So yeah, I wouldn't click that one. Aside from the yeah, you're right.
Okay. All right. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
That was just a question. Okay. Anything else you can think about from Mr. Silcox?
No.
Okay.
Elizabeth attempted to kill 2 others before she succeeded. While at Carescent in 2007, she injected 86-year-old Clotilde Adriano with more insulin than she needed and started testing insulin doses on her older sister, 88-year-old Albina. Both died later, but their deaths were not connected to Wetlaufer. On August 11, 2007, Beth murdered James Silcox, an 84-year-old, as she described, by giving him a lethal dose of insulin. The Silcox family did not have any suspicions and first heard about the investigation through a radio broadcast. During the next few years at Carescent Care, Beth murdered 6 more of her patients. 84-year-old Morris Granite, 87-year-old Gladys Millard, 95-year-old Helen Matheson, 96-year-old Mary Zewaninski, 90-year-old Helen Young, and 79-year-old Maureen Pickering.
I think I gave her 40, and again, there was that searching, but it wasn't so much that I wanted her to die, it was more let's see what happens. And I did that to her on more than one occasion.
Okay.
Albino was...
Sorry, she was prior to Mr. Silcox, right?
Yes.
So this was the very first person that you
Yes.
injected with insulin?
Yes,
Okay, and we're at Crescent Care,
at Crescent Care.
and her room was where?
Her room was in the east wing, second door on the left. Then east wing, first door on the left was her sister Albina. She was diabetic.
Okay.
She was October 2007.
Sorry, that was her sister?
Matilda and Albina were sisters, yes.
Oh, okay.
Then there was Wayne. He was on the north wing. He had dementia. He was diabetic. He could be uncooperative. And I gave him a large overdose. And he wanted to die. So again, that one night I just felt that surging, but he didn't die.
How would you know he wanted to die?
He would say it sometimes, that he just wanted to go.
Where was Wayne in the Crescent Care?
He was in room 8, which is the men's ward down at the end.
So 8 or A?
8.
The number?
8 north. 8 north.
Alright, and would that be a roommates in there as well?
Yes.
Do you know who he was roomed with?
No.
Alright, and Mike with Huntington's disease?
That was 2009.
What is that disease?
It robs you of your body and you still have your mind. You get progressively more agitated, you get progressively more psychotic, and you're in a wheelchair and you've got all these movements that you can't control. It's a horrible disease.
And how old was Mike?
He was 54. And again, one night I just felt that searching and I thought, now this must be God because this man is not enjoying his life at all. So I gave him a large amount of insulin. I think I gave him 90 total.
Did he ever do anything to harm you?
No, never.
Did Wayne?
No.
Albina?
No.
Matilda?
No.
This takes us to a different location, Telford Place in Paris. That's obviously Paris, Ontario, correct?
Yeah.
Outside of Brantford, Woodstock area?
2016 winter.
Okay, and that was Sandra?
Yeah, and
How old was Sandra?
Sandra, I think she was in her 70s.
In her letter of confession, she names 4 other victims, including the sisters from her time at Crescent that had not died from her overdose. And in 2014, after starting her new job at Meadow Park, she attempted to kill 2 others, and succeeded in killing her last victim, 75-year-old Arpad Horvath. Elizabeth claims that she struggled with what she'd done, but at other times she felt it was the right thing to do because her victims wanted or needed to die. Beth compared her state of mind to having 2 heads. She later said in a hospital interview that she'd compartmentalized her feelings, that she could quell her rising anger by thinking of killing people, while simultaneously holding conversations and performing daily functions. These, as she refers to them, dual thoughts, are not something she felt she could share with her psychiatrist, though she did admit that her medication did make her feel better. Elizabeth claims that the stress and heavy workload from Crescent Care caused her thoughts to return about killing people. The people she wanted to kill were usually her colleagues or anyone that had upset her. However, she chose to take her anger out on the patients because of their inability to report her, as many suffered from dementia or did not understand what was happening to them. Beth chose insulin as her weapon of choice because it was not counted like the other medications. In fact, many patients were on sliding scales for their insulin doses, so she could more easily get away with changing the doses than she could with medications like hydromorphone or morphine. She even bypassed a secondary check by simply pulling the right dose and verifying it with another nurse before changing the dial on her patient's meds or returning to the med room to draw up more of the medication. Unbelievably, Elizabeth confessed to her crimes on more than one occasion before being called in for a police interview. She told her girlfriend in 2008 that she'd killed 2 of her patients with insulin, but according to Beth, her girlfriend had merely advised her to stop doing it and nothing more. Beth then confided in a high school student during a birthday outing at Medieval Times in 2011. Beth explained that she'd taken the girl out a few days after she decided to not kill any more people and told her that she'd gotten close with God again. Beth told the interviewer that the girl later claimed that Beth threatened her, but that it wasn't true, but that the girl had simply agreed to not tell since Beth had stopped killing. Then the student ended her friendship with Beth a few days later. In 2014, Beth claimed that she told her pastor and his wife about the killings. Instead of reporting her, they prayed with her. The pastor believed that Beth had given herself back to God and wouldn't report the crimes as long as she didn't kill anyone else. In 2014, Beth said she told an ex-boyfriend through text message exchanges that she'd killed several patients in her care, to which the boyfriend allegedly advised her to quit her job so that she wouldn't be tempted to do it again. That year, she is also said to have seen an attorney and confessed, then went directly to a substance abuse program to curb her urges. After leaving the program, the next person that she told was her Narcotics Anonymous sponsor. During the same interview, she claimed to have told another friend, a co-worker at Cam H, that advised her to turn herself in or she'd be forced to call the police. If Beth's claims are to be believed, and some have been corroborated, Beth told approximately 7 people about the murders before writing her confession to the police. Beth had a habit of lying, which could explain why she wasn't taken seriously. Beth also claims that one of her patients did alert another nurse that she'd been injected with something, but Beth advised the nurse that it was a vitamin shot. Another patient requested that another nurse give him insulin because he thought that Beth didn't know what she was doing. Elizabeth stated that she never went into a shift with the plan of taking someone's life, but that it came on suddenly during her shifts when she became annoyed or angry with a patient, calling it a red surge that came over her and then a laughing feeling when she'd finished the job. Beth reported that she tried to stop killing several times, but finally quit her job in the end and sought help for the final time because she was afraid that she was capable of hurting younger patients.
So as far as your latest position at St. Elizabeth,
Yeah.
that was your last position as a RN, is that
Yes,
correct?
it was.
Okay, and you said you resigned from there?
Yes.
Okay, what brought you to that?
That's where things get a little crazy.
Okay.
This is part that I haven't told the doctors. Because it seems so stupid now. When my ex and I broke up in 2007, I was already taking the medication for my borderline personality disorder. And I was so angry. And it was like a voice said inside me, I'll use you, don't worry about it. And the different times that I have caused people's deaths or caused them discomfort through the insulin, I believe it was the influence of that voice or whatever it was. It wasn't a voice in my head, it was a voice in here. And when I would do it, afterwards I would hear like a laughter in my chest. So, started working for St. Elizabeth, and I was doing well, but it was a lot of pressure. And the way that, that I've helped people to die has been through insulin. And after my 30-day evaluation, my supervisor came to me and said, I'm really sorry. We wanted you for Woodstock, but we have so many kids in schools in Ingersoll that need help with their insulin pumps that you're going to start working in Ingersoll.
Okay.
And I panicked. I didn't want to do that. Because I felt, what if? Those are kids. So it was about a week after that I quit.
Elizabeth was arrested and charged with 8 counts of murder, 4 counts of attempted murder, and 2 counts of aggravated assault. She waived her right to a preliminary hearing and pleaded guilty to her crimes on June 1, 2017. On June 26, 2017, she was sentenced to 8 concurrent life terms with no parole for 25 years. Elizabeth cared for hundreds of patients during her time as a nurse and caregiver. Many feel that Beth was probably responsible for more than the 8 deaths that she is charged for, though no additional charges or cases have been brought against her. Elizabeth's case is not the first of its kind, nor is it the last. Angel of Death, a term coined for healthcare serial killers, sometimes use the excuse that they were showing their patients mercy by killing them. But euthanasia is not the motive here, and Elizabeth has expressed many times that she was always aware of what was right and what was wrong. Beth has blamed her mental illness, her drug addiction, her identity struggle, and the stresses of her job for the motive behind the killings. But there will never be a justifiable reason that she took the lives of 8 helpless seniors. Just because her victims were in their twilight years does not make her crimes any less heinous. These people were still integral parts of their family and communities that loved them. James Silcox, called Lance by his family and friends, was a World War II veteran that served in Holland, Belgium, and Italy. He was married to his wife Agnes for over 60 years. They had 6 children, 13 grandchildren, and 14 great-grandchildren. In a eulogy, James was remembered fondly as a gentleman, a helpmate, a problem solver, a fixer, a builder, a prankster, an animal lover, a true card, a compassionate and loving human being, and a man of deep, abiding faith. Maurice Mo Granat was a father of 3 and grandfather to 5. He was a longtime mechanic and is described as a tinkerer and handyman. Beloved by many, Mo was called slow and easygoing, nothing to worry about. He was taken from his loving family just 2 days before Christmas. Gladys Millard was referred to as the beloved wife of her husband Henry and mother to 2 children. They had 5 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. She was very involved in her community as a longtime member of the Knox Presbyterian Church, the Ladies' Auxiliary, a Rose Rebecca Lodge member for 35 years and a TOPS member for over 25 years. Helen Matheson was married to Carl Leroy Matheson, with whom she shared 2 children. They had 3 grandchildren and 4 great-grandchildren. She was also an involved member of her community, and she was active in the Innerkip United Church and was a schoolteacher. She is described as a kind and quiet person that would never say a bad word about anybody. Mary Zerowinski was the oldest victim at 96 years old at the time of her death. Unfortunately, little is known about Mary. Helen Young was born in Scotland and served in the Second World War. She married her husband Peter in 1948 and moved to Canada in 1949. Active in her community, she was involved with the Lions Club and Humane Society of Woodstock. The couple travelled often, and she is described as a truly sturdy Scottish lass who did not hesitate to speak her mind on any and all subjects. Mary Pickering was married to Hubert Pickering, who are both remembered for their great sense of humour and unwavering friendship. And Arpad Art Horvath was an avid outdoorsman that loved to travel. He was married to his wife Maria for 60 years, and they had 3 children. He was born in Budapest, Hungary, and was the youngest of 11 children. He was a miner before moving with his wife to Hamilton, where he became a millwright and trained apprentices for over 35 years. Art owned 2 farms and was called a community leader. So, what do you think drove Elizabeth Wetlaufer to do the unthinkable? Do you think that these tragedies could have been prevented? Let us know your opinions in the comments below.